Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Halal Gap. I'm your host, Sofia, Alani, and I'm joined by my co host, Sikandar Atiq. If you guys have enjoyed our episodes of The Halal Gap so far and want to make sure not to miss the next one, please follow us on Apple and Spotify and leave us a review. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channel. We have an incredible guest joining us today. Take it away, Sikandar.
He is a content creator and TikTok superstar with 25 million likes and 132,000 followers who built a massive following with his incredible commentary on reality TV. Earlier this year, he launched Salam Nerds, an inclusive podcast that recaps popular TV and reality shows through the lens of many different cultures and perspectives to achieve greater understanding of the world in which we live. Joining us from New Jersey, you know him as WatchWithNeebz. Please welcome Neebz Khan.
What's
Woo!
up? Yo, what's up, guys? Salam alaikum. How are
What's
you guys?
up? Salam,
Walaikum
salam.
salam.
We
Oh,
are
man,
good. How are you, man? How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be here, man. When I went to the Mosquers Film Festival and met some of you guys, I was like, these are my people. I found them. I found them. It's so hard to
Welcome
find
home,
people. It's so
dude. We were
Yeah.
so
hard to
happy
find
to
people
have
like
you.
this.
No, no,
Yeah.
no. That's you guys are the ones who made that festival, so we appreciate you attending. And
It
for
Mhm.
was
those who
fun.
are, for those who have like the honor and privilege of watching this on YouTube or TikTok, holy shit! Look at Neebs' mustache. Like I am still fanboying so hard right now over this thing. It is
Yeah. So
incredible.
what happened was I went to Comic Con this year and I decided to go with Ted Lasso because one of my
I
favorite
saw
shows. Got to throw
that.
that.
It's so
Yeah.
good.
So I grew a Ted Lasso mustache, but then I'm like, Halloween is only like a few weeks away. Might as well keep it, or else I gotta start from
Yeah,
It's
scratch.
amazing. I did the
100%.
same thing, but like without any Ted Lasso reasoning. I did we actually our marketing director Narmeen, she got married a week after I got married over the summer,
Yeah,
and I decided that for their three events, I was going to do three totally different looks, and
Yep.
one of them was a mustache, and I enjoyed it thoroughly.
And to clarify, Sikandar means 3 different looks facial hair wise, like
Yeah,
not
yeah,
outfit, like
yeah, yeah,
specifically
Oh, that's
different
funny.
faces.
That
yeah,
is
It
yeah.
was
It was,
funny.
good.
but I can never get to your level, man. That thing is Saddam style. I love it.
Uh, you know what it is, man? It's my Patan jeans, man. I think that's what it is.
Very
we're we're,
First
mou-
strong
we're
flush.
we're
strong
mountain people.
follicles.
We need that hair to keep us warm.
They
You
come clutch, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, Sikandar, you
That's
gotta get some of those for Edmonton Edmonton
I know.
winters.
Seriously, seriously. Okay, wait. So you went to Comic Con. I heard that the first time you went to Comic Con was a wild adventure. Is that true?
Yeah, so the first time I went to Comic Con was crazy wild. So I went in 2012, and there weren't a lot of
Okay.
like brown people at Comic Con back then. So I was like the only brown person in nerd space. Felt very out of place. But crazy things happened. So I went to this thing called a Tomatina Festival. It's like the Great Tomato Fight.
Oh
They
yeah.
have it in Spain. You've probably seen it in the movies. Zindagi Na
Yeah,
Milegi
yeah,
Dushan.
yeah.
They
That's
have that.
exactly what I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I remember Hrithik did that. Yeah, I'm with
Yes,
you.
yes. So they made a version of that at Comic Con, and it was literally
Cool.
just a parking lot, and they fenced it around, gave us a bunch of tomatoes. The tomatoes were past ripe, so they don't, so like you can't eat them anyways. And there's a giant tomato fight that we have, and we're just like launching them at each other. People are shoving at them, and they hurt. Like people don't show you that in the movies, but they feel like baseballs because you're supposed to like squish them and then throw it, right? No one told us that, and everyone's throwing like these
Just
hard tomatoes at people, and they're just coming at you left and right,
Oh
and
my
it's
god.
wild. So they were like, there'll be showers there. So we're like, okay, cool. We'll take a shower there, and then we'll go back to the hotel, and then we'll go back to this Comic Con event that we have, which is a Doctor Who, which is like a very popular show in the UK. So we
Yeah.
wanted to go see this. It was really, really popular. So the showers were hoses. They were just hoses, and
Perfect.
and the line for these hoses were like crazy long, and like it was crazy. And we're like, we're not waiting around for these hose. And by hose, I mean like actual water hose, not like hose. But we're like, we're not waiting for these. So what we did was we went to a grocery store. We got a few paper towels, and we just dripped in our boxers. And we're just like,
Nice.
listen, we got to get back. So we drove back in our boxers, and me and my friend, we have tickets to this thing. We're cutting it really close. They don't let you in once the doors close because the actors come in and they're recording it. So we get dropped off at the hotel, uh, and we just run in. No clothes, just our boxers, like no
Oh my
clothes, no
god.
nothing. And then we go up and we're like, oh shit, we don't have our card key because it's in with the clothes, and the clothes are in a bag because we didn't want them to get like dirty up the rental car. So we're like begging and pleading with like the person, like let us in, let us in the room. They're like, "Do you have like ID?" I'm like, "I don't even have eye clothes, man. How am I supposed to get in?" And then the guy took pity on us. He's like, "Can you describe anything that's in your room?" So we're like, "Oh, our suitcases are in there." So they opened the door. We showed them the suitcases. The suitcase had our names on it. They were like, "Okay, fine." So we went there. We took a shower. We went to the event. We barely made it on time. We met like Matt Smith and all these famous actors, and we just
Nice.
made it in time, and it was really really cool. But what we didn't know is like the next day. Um, Apparently tomato gets soaked into your pores and then it
Oh,
comes out at
fun.
night.
Oh
So like
God.
we slept in the beds and they were like white bed sheets and they made an outline of like your body and it looked like a murder scene. And also like our clothes had tomato on them, right? So it looked like blood. They called the cops. They thought we murdered somebody.
Oh my God. That's that's
Like in your
wild.
hotel room?
Yeah.
Like the
Can you imagine
housekeeping
that
was
phone
like,
call?
"Oh my
Can you
That
imagine
god."
that phone call from the hotel staff to the cops? They're like, these two guys ran in their underwear, convinced us to let us in, and then murdered someone in
And
the
then the
bed.
next day, clearly they murdered
Yeah.
someone.
Comic-Con is always an adventure, but
Did
that
they
was
did
the
they
first
like
one.
question you? Like
Yeah,
were
what
you
What?
happened?
questioned?
No,
Like
once
were
they
the
saw it
cops?
with tomato, they were like, "This is
Okay.
stupid. Why do you call us here?" And like, but but like it's weird because like I've never seen like apparently something gets into your pores and like when you sweat at night, it literally comes out like your body. It's the shape of your body. So it looked like
Jeez.
that. Like you know when they make a chalk outline of somebody when they're
Yeah,
dead,
yeah,
like
yeah.
it looked like that, but with like red dots. It was just wild. I've never seen that.
That's
That's
insane. That's insane.
interesting. Tomato's supposed to be really good for your skin at least, so, like,
Oh,
you're
my
probably
I've
skin
heard
was
that.
glowing.
amazing. It was
Yeah.
yeah,
I
my skin
bet,
was
I bet.
amazing. I looked like I came
Like
from the Mediterranean sun and, like, it was amazing. I didn't wanna eat pasta for a month though, cause like, that smell got to you, but
Yeah.
it was good.
I wonder if
That's
this is like
awesome.
I wonder if there's like a spa treatment where you can just like dip your body in tomato sauce and then
Yeah.
I
get
don't think it would
glowing
be I feel like
glowing
they just
skin.
take a tomato and just, like, rub it on
Rub
you,
it on you?
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
That's probably more
There's
efficient.
gotta be, theurs gotta be.
That's
Yo, you
wild.
but you make sure you, like, get, like, sheets that won't ruin, cause they'll come out your
Yeah,
Yeah,
pores at
yeah,
night. That was wild.
yeah. Yeah,
that's
that's
insane.
interesting, that's so funny.
Okay, you referenced so okay, you've got a podcast that's called Salam Nerds. The
Yes.
salam part we get. The nerd part, can you help us like understand how you define nerd culture?
Yeah, so nerd culture is basically anything that involves a fandom. So like basically like there's Game of Thrones fandom, then there's the Rings of Power fandom, and then there's also reality show fandoms, like people who really love The Bachelor. They're called like Bachelor Nation, and right now Love is Blind is happening right now, and that's really
Yeah, it
popular.
is.
So these anything that has a fandom is considered nerd culture, and that's what we like to cover because a lot of these times, nerd culture is getting more and more inclusive but the people reviewing and talking about these things are not inclusive. They're always
Hmm.
still white people. And I knew that Miss Marvel's coming out and a bunch of these shows were coming out and I didn't want there to be no voices of color talking about these shows. So when I really started out, it was all reality shows. Like I went like I don't like to take credit cuz I really feel like I was just at the right place at the right time. Like I was on in TikTok early. So I blew up cuz I would cover reality shows and react to them because they would be so ridiculous. They're just so ridiculous. Some of the stuff that happens, right? So like,
Yes.
it was in the middle of COVID, and I was like lonely like everybody else, and I needed human interaction. So I'm like, let me just record myself watching shows, and then my friends would react to them. And my friends were like, "This is so funny. This is hilarious. You got to put it on like a different platform, like on TikTok." So I started doing that and I was watching Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, and this woman, she says, "Assalamu alaikum, bitches," and I recorded that, and I was just giggling like an idiot. Like I was in my PJs, I had like a basketball jersey on, my face and hair looked busted, and I was just giggling, and it got like I don't know, like 12 million likes. Like it went wild. So like I just got lucky. That's what I tell everybody. But I started doing reality shows and just doing more and more of that but then, like when I knew like Miss Marvel was coming out, I was like, listen, I'm a expert in nerd culture. I need to start like focusing my content on that because when this show comes out, they're gonna need people to talk about it who are not
Mm.
just white.
Mhm.
So I started slowly talking about comic books and nerd culture and all this stuff, and then it just grew and grew. And then when Miss Marvel came out, I was in the perfect position to be a voice for that show because I've read all the comics. I know everything that happens in the cartoons, in the actual comic books, why some of the characters were created. But I'm also Pakistani from New Jersey. My last name is Khan. I work in Jersey City. Like there were so many parallels. But like I can talk about this better than anybody, right?
Mhm.
So it was really, really cool. And then a lot of people saw me tweeting about it and stuff, and then I just blew up from there, and it was really cool. And I'm glad that I was the one talking about it because a lot of people had really no concept of like what a Pakistani wedding is like, what Allahu
Mhm.
Akbar means, right? Like they show that at a wedding, and I'm like, yeah, that's 100% the way we're supposed to be shown. It's never meant to be a war cry 100% of the time. It's a joyous thing. People didn't know that. No one was talking about it, and I just happened to be there, and it was really cool. And Disney reached out. I made a commercial for Disney, like a national commercial that aired on national television, which was really cool. I brought my niece in it too. So
Aw.
it was really cool experiences that just happened. And all it has to do with you just like being there at the right place at the right time. Like I have no talent. I have no talent. Like I am just at the right place at the right time. And
Maybe that's
like
your talent, is
that's my
being at the right
talent.
place at the right
That's a
time.
great talent.
Like
That's a good talent to have.
there's this movie that I love. It's called Field of Dreams, and they say if you build it, they will come. So all you do is you go out there and you do what you're doing, and the people will come. Like it'll just happen.
Mhm.
Nice. Nice.
And so, oh, sorry, you want to go?
No, 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 no. Go ahead. Go
Okay,
ahead.
I was just because I like there's so much I want to talk to you about. I'm a big nerd, not in certain the same areas as you, but just generally. So there's a lot of the things you've covered on your podcast and stuff I want to talk about. But I want to talk about the reality TV thing and like why reality TV. Like, was that always a thing you loved, or like was it like a pandemic
No,
love, or like
no, no.
what?
I actually hated reality TV show. I thought it
Mm-hmm.
was the dumbest thing in the world. I thought only idiots watch reality TV. So
Yep.
I went on a date with this girl, brilliant girl. She's a neurologist, like the smartest person I've ever met, photographic memory. And then she told me she loves to watch The Bachelor. And I was just like, what?
The cognitive
You?
dissonance. What? Yeah.
I was like, what is it? And she's like, listen, sometimes I just want to come home and turn my brain off, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and I really liked her. So I was like, I'll give it a shot. So I was like, whatever, I'll give it a shot. And then like I was like hate watching it at first, and but then like we would just discuss what's happening, and then we would watch it ironically. Then you start watching
Mm-hmm.
it for real, and then you're like, then you're in the universe, and then you're done.
Yeah.
It's over for you.
And then you're like
Yeah.
hashtagging Batch Nation on all of your
Oh yeah.
posts, and that's it.
And the funny thing
I
is, like,
was
I don't even talk to that girl anymore. But like,
so
she left this thing with me. She left me with this baggage.
yeah. Or you did it for love and then found a different kind of love. That's it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, but
But
she's awesome. We were still friends.
that's dope because I agree. Like I feel like I had the same experience where I was like I had so many friends who watched The Bachelor in particular, like Bachelor Bachelorette, and I was like, this is like why? Like this is exploitative. It's like misogynistic. Like why are you doing this? And then I watched it and I was just like, oh, this is so fun. This is so fun
Yeah.
and funny, and like this is exactly how I want to spend my time.
You know what it
Um
is?
and
I do feel like now recently, and like it wasn't like that before, but now there's more people of color coming on reality TV,
yeah.
Mm.
and I feel like there needs to be people talking about those things too, because what people
Mhm.
can't see, some of these like shows are mainly like covered by white women in their 40s, right? No
Mhm.
hate to them because they are my demographic. Shout out to them. They love me. I love them too. But they don't understand some of these undertones, right? Like
Mhm.
when you have people on these shows that are people of color, and you see them choose over lighter skinned people, like you pick up on the
Mhm.
colorism, you pick on subtle things, you pick on
Mm.
how like if there's a black person on the show, they get called aggressive, and you know like what that means outside
Yeah.
in the real world.
And
And
even
there's
like even I was just say like even like how like did you watch Rachel's season of The Bachelorette?
yes, yeah,
And
yeah,
even how like the race because she was the first black bachelorette and the race was like the main storyline throughout the whole season.
yes,
Like was the race thing of like is she going to pick a black man or a white man and like they kept this one white guy on who had like historically
yes.
really awful like tweets that were like super racially charged and it's just like
Hmm.
you're like yeah, I think at that point you're just like, what are the ethics of this? Of like, when you do have this
Yes.
representation, now what though? Like with this kind of, yeah, there's so much nuance there. But anyway, we don't have to
No, no,
talk about the
you're
Bachelor
you're
that much.
totally right, and I want to add on that because they had the first Black Bachelor, and the
Mm-hmm.
storyline was that he had an absent father, and they brought his father on the show, completely
Mm-hmm.
blindsided him, tried to make
Mm-hmm.
them hash their differences on national TV, and it
Natural,
was
yeah,
really inappropriate. And
yeah.
people of color are the ones that are like, hey, this is inappropriate, and some of the people, they don't have the context to know, like, why is this bad? Why, I don't get
Mm-hmm.
it. They've had
Mm-hmm.
white people teach an Indian girl yoga in one of the episodes.
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah. Yeah. Anytime
Amazing.
they travel and it's just like it's almost like so exploity also, just the way that they're like, look at this like exotic place, and like look at, and it's
yes,
just, oh, ooh, I'm cringing a little, like stop learning how to do like the hula dance in Maui. Like, I don't,
yes.
that's a sacred, stop it. And it's, yeah, it's very
Wait,
interesting.
you're not allowed to hula? I'm
Like, you
learning something.
can, but it's I think it's similar, like it's like a sacred
It's like a
dance.
cultural dance.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay, okay.
and
It's
it's
kind of
like
like the
done in
haka.
ceremony.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
really?
like that,
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
interesting.
And so like there's
Interesting.
a lot of people who
The
are
more I
like,
know.
yeah, who, there's a lot of like white women who are like, oh, for fitness, just like they do with yoga. And it's
Right.
just like really frustrating because then they're like, oh, look, we'll like have yoga and wine. And you're like, those two things don't go together. Like, stop corrupting these sacred practices that don't belong to you.
yeah. They
Yeah.
colonized yoga. They were trying to
Oh
colonize
my God.
Hulu. Actually,
Yeah.
you know what it is? Reality show, The Bachelor. They pretty much colonized Ristas because that's what a Rista
Really?
is.
Like Chris Harrison, like before he got problematic, was the original Rishta auntie for sure. Like, absolutely. He's gone now though. We don't like him
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
But yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Even just like because when all the like the Black Lives Matter stuff was happening, and that first Black Bachelor, like he picked his finalist was someone who had gone to one of those like plantation parties or whatever.
Yes,
Oh, I
And
remember
so
yes.
this.
then
I
there was
even
like a
heard about
big
this.
controversy, and then Chris Harrison, that's why he got canceled, was because he was like, what's the big deal, like she was young, like I don't get it. And they made Rachel, who was the first Black Bachelorette, have this conversation with Chris Harrison again, that was like
Hmm.
recorded and aired live. And it's just like, you can't, like, it's so interesting how like that kind of move towards inclusiveness and inclusion of like diversity has also led to like just so much more labor being required of the people who are involved in those situations to like
Yes.
manage whiteness and white supremacy. And it's like it's a time.
And it was a really interesting thought because everyone was like, okay, they have a few people of color on screen. But then when you look behind the screen, there were no
Mm-hmm.
people of color. There were no
None.
producers, there were no executives. And like they were making these terrible choices because they don't have
Mm-hmm.
the like experience in the background to know how problematic some of these things are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically like a reflection of film and television in general over the last decade, right? It's like even as more stories are being told, the fact is that our people are not telling these stories nearly enough,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, clearly that's also a reflect. I wonder who's behind Indian matchmaking. Like, is it an actual like
Seema Auntie's
I,
manager,
yeah,
obviously.
no, is it like a full Desi team or is it like just Netflix's white producers being like, "Hey, I've heard of
I
this Rishta
wonder.
thing."
I wonder.
So
I should pay attention to those credits more.
I'm pretty sure it's pretty much an all white team because I've been
Mm.
approached by a reality TV show, and everyone who has approached me that I
Yo,
talked to was a white woman.
yeah, fair enough,
Oh,
fair enough.
Yeah.
interesting.
Although I did hear that there was like like there was a casting call for like a Muslim version of like Indian match. Are you on it? Oh
Ah,
my god, you're
are
gonna
you
be
I
on it,
on
aren't you?
it?
You
I
applied for
cannot
it?
I
I can.
cannot confirm or
Got
deny,
it.
but
Oh my god,
Oh
amazing,
my goodness.
amazing.
Okay, well, we'll
I
keep
know
an eye out.
I know a few people who applied, so
yeah.
yeah, I'm excited to see how that turns out. Interesting, interesting.
Mhm.
All right,
And
very cool.
have you watched Temptation Island?
No, I haven't watched Temptation Island. There's
Okay.
Temptation Island, F Boy Island, and there's a few other ones, and like I
Love
can't
Okay.
keep them
Island.
straight. Love Island,
No,
yeah.
no. But Temptation Island is like actually so good. Like, I
Middle
think
age.
and I mean that in the sense of like it's still dramatic as hell, but
Mhm.
like where The Bachelor and Love Island and stuff is
Oil.
like is
That's
very
what
like
that's in the Middle East. That's the Middle East
No,
version
no,
of
that's the
oil.
Alberta, the Alberta man. Love oil.
Island, Love Island. And so like while those tend to be more like exploitative, I feel like Temptation Island doesn't do that as much. And like the host is like, I swear to you, he has some kind of like relationship counseling therapy thing, and like it's actually like it's so good. Like he will like
Yeah.
get into stuff, and like people are like working through their stuff, and it's like it's actually like still dramatic and fun to watch, but like it feels less gross because like these people are coming out better instead of just being like devastated on national television. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I heard the same thing about Love is Blind Japan, I believe it was, because
Oh,
they was
interesting.
very wholesome and it was very like nice and they
Mm.
were all beautiful love stories and they were really really good and they weren't as problematic like Shake and his internalized racism
Yikes.
and some of
Yeah.
the stuff that was happening there. So it was really interesting. Yeah, so it's really interesting to see reality shows in different cultures. I'm going to be
Yeah.
excited when we have like a Pakistani reality show. I wonder what that would look like.
Yeah.
I wonder
Yeah,
if it
what could
exists.
you
Like, is there
Like
nothing on like PTV or something that's like a
there's gotta
reality
be,
show?
right? I
There's
don't know.
gotta
There's gotta
be.
be.
Well,
There's
there's
gotta
because this isn't Pakistani, it's Indian, but like there's the one that's like the Big Brother, like Big Boss or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, Big
So I
Boss.
Oh
feel like
yeah.
there's ones that are out there, but yeah, I would be nice to have one that was like so
I
culturally
guess
specific. But yeah, I don't even know what
yeah.
you would put on TV. Like I don't even know what you could do.
I
No.
guess Coke Studios is kind of reality TV, but like not really
Yeah,
following their
yeah.
lives. Maybe,
I want to see
maybe.
the Real Housewives of Lahore. That's what I want to see.
Yo, that would be insane.
Ooh.
Actually, I remember now. Omar Mirza, our friend Omar Mirza.
Yeah, yeah.
He showed me this show once where it was exactly like that. It was like Real Housewives of Lahore. I can't remember. I'm gonna message him afterwards and ask him what it was. But
I
there
think
is
I know what you're
something
talking about. There was a
that's out
clip that
there.
went viral a while ago. I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, with the what is this behavior puja situation? No,
No, that was
that's
Big
not
No,
Brother, I
Lahore.
think.
Never mind. Was it?
no.
Okay. I don't
That
know
was
where
what?
that came from. I forgot that was real.
That
That
was
was
Big
Big Boss.
Boss.
Okay, there you
Yeah,
go.
Okay, there you go.
Thanks,
Asif
Asif.
coming in clutch. What? Okay, so what were your thoughts on Miss Marvel? I know you said that you kind of
yeah.
tried to become an expert on the subject matter. What was your
Yeah.
overall thoughts?
So Miss Marvel is a show that I think was really catered toward people like me. So obviously I was going to really really love it, right? Comic book fans who know the genre, who love Marvel, who want to see themselves represented. I thought it did a really really good job. I think there are places it fell short. I thought the villains were not really that, thought out. I know they had a lot
Hmm.
of production issues with COVID and stuff. So there was a lot of things that they cut out. But overall I think it was really good. I think it was way better than my expectations. And since like we're Muslims or Pakistanis, like we have like representation is kind of like the bar is so low right now, right?
Hmm.
But it really exceeded my expectations, and I thought they did a good job staying true to the comics. Even though they had to change her powers, they still kept the essence of what her powers are, right?
Wait. They had to change her powers?
Yeah, how
Yeah.
do
So
you
her,
feel about
yeah,
that? Because I was like, she's not supposed to be able, that's not what it is.
Okay, I
But then
actually never
I
read
was
the
yeah.
fine with
comics.
it.
So, like, what was her powers originally? I
So
didn't
so
read the
her powers
comic. No.
are yeah. So her powers originally were polymorphs, right? So she was
Mhm.
kind of like Mr. Fantastic. She can
Ah,
stretch, she can turn
right.
small, she can turn big, but she can also
Mhm.
transform into other people. And one of her biggest storyline
Mm.
is that Kamala uh, we have to deal with her internalized racism because when she first transformed, she transformed into Carol Danvers, who is this
Mhm.
blue-eyed, blonde-hair white woman with Eurocentric beauty standards, and she thought that's what she needed to look like to become a hero. And then slowly on, she realizes that who she is good enough, and she kind of gets to love her own body and her own self. So when they changed her powers, people thought they were gonna lose that element of like internalized racism and how she feels about herself and her culture.
Yeah.
Uh,
Why did
and they
they
were
do that?
worried.
Was that like a production thing? I don't even.
So there's a few reasons they did that, right? So a lot of people think they did it because Mr. Fantastic is coming and Fantastic Four
Yeah.
is coming and his powers are very similar. I don't think that's the reason, but that's a good theory. Another reason is the CGI budget would have been too much because there is a thing called the what's it what is it, the something valley, I forgot what it's called, but it's when like animation looks too real and it's
Mhm.
really uncomfortable. uh so they were like it would look weird to see somebody with skin like kind of like stretch and stuff. It's like weird.
Mm.
And but the real reason is they want to tie her into bigger stories, because you know how Marvel like to tie stories into other
Yeah.
stories, and they want her to be more related to Captain Marvel, which is the Carol Danvers, the Brie Larson story.
Yeah.
So that's the main reason they did that. The, CGI and stuff might play a little bit of role into it, but they wanted to connect her into the bigger Marvel universe. So for them to change her power to do that, I guess it's a small price to pay to know that our girl's going to be in a lot
Mhm.
more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great, but I also think her new powers, she was still able to get the story across that
Mhm.
she was dealing with her internalized racism, right? You would see her do things like be uncomfortable wearing a costume because it's skin tight, but she knows all the other people are doing it. And then you would see her accidentally slip up and say "ummi" instead of "mom." So it's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like
yeah.
those things where like she's like ashamed of who she is, and then at the end you see her embrace herself. She goes to Pakistan, embraces her culture, gets really connected with her roots, gets connected with her mom. So they were able to have that story even without those powers. And I think they did a great job, and that was really, really cool. So overall, I am very happy with the way Miss Marvel turned out. It's not a big action show. It was never meant to be. It was small
Mm-hmm.
stakes, more of a family friendly, wholesome sitcom kind of show. You can't compare it to something like Avengers Infinity Wars. It's this whole different thing. You would compare it more to like a 90s sitcom like Full House
Yeah.
or Sister
Yeah.
Sister and stuff like that, right? So if that's what they were going for, I think they achieved it. I think they did a great job. I hope they get a season 2. I think they picked the most amazing actress for that show. I think she's brilliant,
Mhm.
and I'm excited to see more. I'm super happy with the way it turned out.
No, that's a good point. And like I got to give them props because even if they were trying to go after this like 90s style sitcom, they still showed like a partition episode, which was kind of
Hmm.
Mhm.
dark. I mean, it was
Mhm.
pretty, it was
It was
pretty legit,
intense.
like, yeah, it was very intense.
I think
So I
everyone I
mean,
know cried in that maybe
yeah,
not
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
guys, but like everyone yeah, it was
So
emotional.
on our podcast, we actually brought in a psychologist who actually specializes in generational trauma, and she is Pakistani, and her thesis was on the partition, and she
Mm.
talked about so much stuff, and it really lets you understand because when our grandparents talk about the partition, they don't talk about the partition as if it was in the past. They actually talk about
Mhm.
it like it just happened because that's
Mm,
how trauma works. Trauma is timeless. You don't know
Mhm.
that something happened in the past. It feels like it just happened,
Mhm.
and it's really interesting. And it kind of explored like why there's so much hate between the cultures and like India and Pakistan. Like a lot of these people live through it, and that
yeah.
trauma to them isn't something that happened years ago. In their mind, it just happened, and I thought that was really interesting. She made like a lot of cool points that
Mhm.
like really opened my mind. And I can't tell you, so many people reached out to me that nobody taught us this. We never even knew this
Mhm.
happened. We never
It's
knew this
true.
existed. It was so
Mhm.
cool to see people learning about this. And Miss
Mhm.
Marvel got people talking, and they showed
Mhm.
just enough to let people explore on their own. I don't think the goal ever was to,
Yeah.
hey, explain exactly everything that happened and why it
Like this
happened.
isn't a documentary, yeah.
Exactly. It was just
Mhm.
enough to get people interested in it so they can do their own research. And Bisma and the writer of that particular episode went on their Twitter and they gave us a list of books that you can read to understand this stuff
Oh
for
wow.
yourself, which I thought was very
Mhm.
responsible and really cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the one thing that like really stood out to me with that entire show was just like the subtle things that go a long ways if you are willing to take that next step. Like the
Mhm.
Yeah.
representation of partition, even the intro music and like who they chose for different intro sequences,
The
like
music was
just small
amazing.
The
things, right?
music
Like
was
yeah,
so good.
totally, totally.
Yeah.
Even like the graffiti art in certain
Yeah.
scenes, it's like
And
okay,
how
yeah,
it
if you
yeah.
no, no,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
So
I gotta give,
good.
yeah, definitely give them props. But I do
Mhm.
understand what you're saying. Like people who like I was wondering this too while I was watching. I was like, if I wasn't Pakistani or if I was not Muslim, would I still enjoy this the same way? I actually don't know the answer to that question. Like, but
So
then at the same time, like, there's enough shows that are not for people who are Pakistani Muslim that I
yeah.
have to watch. So like, who cares if this one is just for us?
Yeah. So I hear that complaint a lot on shows like Rami, right? There was like, hey, this is
Sure.
a show, it's about us, but it's not written for us. It's written for a white audience. And this was a show that was like, listen, we're not writing it for a white audience because there's so many jokes in there they did not explain. They
Yeah,
did not even
totally.
Yeah.
bother explaining it, right? They were
Yeah.
like, listen, if you really care, you can find out. And that's what I did on my TikTok. Like I went through every episode and shared cultural Easter eggs that people might not get if they're not Pakistani and they're not
Mm.
Muslim
Mhm.
or they're not from New Jersey. There were even Jersey references that they didn't bother explaining, right? Like there's people in Ohio that have no idea what a halal guys is. Like
Yeah,
what do they
that's
know,
wild.
right? Right. So it's really cool that they did that stuff. And I think that's cool. I think that's really uh their they know that their audience is smart enough to go and look this up, because the Marvel people are crazy. They go and they find these Easter eggs and they hunt and they find things, and this is related to Thanos and this is related to Captain America. If they can do that for the comics, they can do that for the culture, like in my opinion. So it's really
Totally,
cool.
totally.
And I feel like, listen, there's a lot of people who, even though they didn't understand the culture, they enjoyed it. They don't know the music, they don't know the language, but I know people who have these songs in their playlist now, and they don't even speak the language. Like, it's really cool to see people appreciate our culture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, and I think for sure from like a mainstream perspective, right? Like you mentioned how Rami is kind of, well, you mentioned that that's written by us before a white audience, but even kind of putting that aside for a minute, like just even looking at mainstream, um, just like a mainstream audience, right? Exposure to a mainstream audience. I think just having that show exist within sort of that Disney Plus Marvel
Yeah.
universe, like that in of itself, the fact that it's like title
Mm-hmm.
page of
Mm-hmm.
Disney
Yeah.
Plus, that does
Mm-hmm.
something, you know? There's no
Because I
way that
think
you're not a small brown girl and don't see, "Oh, I can see representation," you know?
yeah, and even like and I think about it too, like even just generally for all kiddos to see that, like for all kids to look at that and be like, yeah, like of course a brown person can be a superhero. Like that
Mhm.
changes people, that changes things for
Mhm.
people and that
Yeah.
changes how they
100%.
interact with each other and stuff. So I think it's so dope. I think the one thing for me was I think that the mother-daughter relationship was like solved too quickly. I was like, there
Mm.
is too much there that I don't think they just suddenly be cool with each other. Like that
So
is some I want them to get into that a little
I
more.
think that's a big issue with almost all the Disney shows. They're too short. The 6 episode
Yeah.
process that they have, it hurts every show. It's not just Miss Marvel.
Yeah.
Every show kind of suffers and gets hurt by that. I don't know why they do that. We actually had the president of what's her name, diversity and inclusion, on our
Mhm.
podcast, and we told her to her face, we're like, we hate this, and she's like, okay. She was like, listen, if you got to watch it and support it, and the more people support it, the more episodes you'll get. And I think,
Yeah.
these are the first batch of shows that Disney pulled out, and they weren't sure that how well they were going to do. So they're testing the waters, and hopefully we get more episodes with more solid stories and more fleshed out stories, like the mother-daughter relationship.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Not to move on from Marvel, but unless Sophia, do you have a Miss Marvel specific question you want to follow up with? No?
No,
Okay. I
I'm
was just
good.
gonna say, like, we're starting to see a little bit more of like this uprise of Muslim or brown creative content. Like just this year, we talked like Miss Marvel, Rami's new season, Mo, King's
Mhm.
Gesture, even Indian matchmaking. Like, and they're on for the most part major streaming platforms. In your opinion, do you think we've kind of turned the tide on representation? Like, where do you think we fall on representation for Muslims and brown people?
So the thing with representation is, and I learned this from actually Mosquers, from you guys, right? I think that way it works is you get representation, and it's not necessarily good, right?
Mhm.
And you kind of have to push through that. And I feel like almost every culture had to do that, right? If you think about Black culture, they had a lot of bad stereotypes, minstrels, and all this stuff, and they had to push through that to get into what they have now. Hispanic people were always shown as criminals and stuff like that, and they had to push through those stereotypes, right? I feel like we have representation, and it's not necessarily good,
Hmm.
and we kind of have to push through that. But is there really good representation, right? Because what we really want to do is find authentic representation.
Mhm.
Because everyone's looking for good representation, and when you see perfect representation, it's not a story, it's a documentary, it's propaganda. Like,
Propaganda,
that's
yeah.
not what makes stories have to have flaws. You can't have
Mhm.
a Muslim character that does everything right. They have to make mistakes, or else they don't learn, and learning is part of the story. So
Mhm.
we have to give some of these flaws, and a lot of these characters like Rami, who you come off like, not the best Muslims, and show this kind of sense of representation, can be solved by more representation, right? So, like, for example, if you have a white character that's problematic, the harm in that gets diluted in a sea of whiteness. So it never really harms anyone. We don't have that. We don't have that. We
Mhm.
have one character, like, for
Mhm.
example, let's talk about reality TV show. There's not a lot of Indian men in reality TV show. We got Sheikh. He was very problematic. He did a lot of horrible stuff. And now people think that a lot of Indian men are like that. And that's because there are no other Indian men in reality TV. So, like, a lot of the problems that we have in representation can be solved with more representation.
Yeah, yeah. I was at a conference last weekend in Montreal where we were the entire point of it was to talk about narrative change, and the one thing that really stood out to me was like the best way to try to change the narrative is just kill them with content.
Yeah.
Abundance of content that we
Mhm.
put out there to showcase the nuance and diversity of the Muslim narrative, right? Like, because there is no one narrative. There's so
Right.
many different
Exactly.
stories, so many different opportunities to showcase those diverse stories. So yeah, no,
Mhm.
totally agree. Totally agree. And do you think? And again, this is a very subjective question, but whatever. That's what we're here for. Do you think there's been, or let me ask it a different way. Who has been your favorite representation of a Muslim on TV thus far?
So my favorite representation of a Muslim on TV has actually been by an actor who isn't Muslim. He's Rahul Kohli.
Ben
He was
Kingsley? No, I'm joking.
no Rahul. So there is a show called Midnight Mass by Mike Flanagan. It's a horror
Okay.
movie. It's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
horror show.
I know it.
It's
Yeah.
so good. So it's about a town who had a preacher. This preacher went away, came back. He's very suspicious. I don't want to spoil it for people if they haven't seen it, but that town has a Muslim sheriff. So it's a Christian town, a very like strong Christian town where like they're very very religious, but their sheriff is like this Muslim guy, and he has a son, and his son is being influenced by like some of these things that are happening with his Christian friends, and then a lot of spooky and scary and spiritual stuff starts happening, like supernatural, and his son starts to say, "Hey, maybe Christianity is the way," and he's like, "You're Muslim. You don't need to go find God. You already have it."
Hmm.
And the way they explain Islam is really great because like there's a scene where the lady who is in charge of the church says, "Well, you guys need to learn about Jesus." And he's like, "We know about Jesus. We love Jesus. Jesus is part of our religion. We have more stuff written about Jesus in our religion than we probably have of like other prophets." And it's really cool to see someone say that on TV on a big Netflix show,
Yeah.
and the show ends in such a beautiful way. Um, he stays true to his religion, and when he died, you see him like praying.
Damn, spoiler alert. Whew.
Well, to be fair, like yeah, spoilers at the end, but like listen, homie does not last. I'm sorry.
Oh no.
but
Heartbreak.
but the show's been out for like 3 years. Come on, guys, get with
Yeah.
it.
At a
Statute of
certain point,
limitations has
it's
passed.
your
We
own
got it.
fault. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's a great show, but he dies praying Fajr, and it's
Mm.
Oh
really
wow.
really beautiful. And you see the sunset, and you see him pass out, and it's one of the most beautiful scenes with Islamic imagery that I've ever seen in my entire life. It was
And it's a
amazing,
death scene. That's
fantastic.
interesting.
Yeah, but the
Cool.
thing is, like, even though it didn't have a Muslim person playing it, they hired two Muslim consultants to run everything by to make sure that they were doing a good job. And it was really cool because they brought up how he was a cop during 9/11, and he felt like he was betraying his people because they had him surveillance Muslims, and that's why he left the NYPD to come to this small town because he didn't feel comfortable doing that. So they gave this character so much like nuance and stuff, right? And it's really cool. And he has this soliloquy where he talks about it, and it's very good. It's beautiful representation, and I really, really think that everyone should go watch that show. And also, like, yeah, it's a spoiler, but he's also unfortunately not a big character in that, so he's like a side character, but still one of the best representations I've ever seen.
Mm.
Interesting. All
I
right.
like that
I'll have to
question though.
check it out.
Sikandar, what's yours? Who's
My
yours?
favorite representation of a Muslim?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a good question. I probably should
You
have. I didn't ask it right. Yeah.
you just asked it, bro.
I know. I know.
That's a good
I
question,
don't
man.
have
Who came up with that?
You
who,
What
wrote
hand?
who's the
whatever.
genius that I was only planning to ask questions today. I was trying to answer any. No, I need to come back to that.
Mm.
I don't have an answer off the top of my head. I feel like here's the thing. Like it's an easy answer, so I will not go with it. But I think when Rami did come out, it was the first time you saw like we talked about, right? That more authentic representation rather than just like a specific stereotype, either positive or negative. So that was interesting to me. But I'm not gonna go with Rami just because I feel like that would be too easy of an answer. So I'm gonna come back to this. Do you have one, Sophia? Do you have one ready to go?
I think I too. I think I loved everything about We Are Lady Parts.
Oh
Oh
Like
yeah, that
it
yes.
was
was
good.
just
That was
like
good.
so good. But I really feel very, very connected to Iman Vellani's Kamala Khan because I think too like she herself is like a Canadian Ismaili girl, and like I am also a Canadian Ismaili girl, and I think like a lot of representation of Muslims like does tend to focus on like the Sunni kind of interpretation of Islam. And so as like a minority Shia member, like I think it's really hard to see yourself sometimes, even if there's Muslim representation, like it's still not fully you. And she's still like Kamala Khan is still like a Sunni Muslim character, so like that's was still there, but just because of the actress, I think I was just like I
Yeah.
really connected with that, because I was like, oh, like that's it's not me, but that is me, you know, like it was cool.
Absolutely, everyone should feel represented by a character, and it's a good
Hmm.
feeling to look at a character and be like, oh, that's me. There's someone who's just like me.
Hmm.
It's nice.
Yeah, it was very like it made my heart warm. It was
Yeah.
truly heartwarming. Like it was really
That
nice.
was really, and I was like pushing my sisters to like watch it with their kids. Like that was the type of
Hmm.
show where I was like, "Yo, you need to like watch this, but like watch it with the kids," because I feel like it's so
Yeah,
important for the younger generation to like see that. You know,
It
absolutely.
really is. In fact, I would say it's even important for the older generations because
hundred
they have
percent.
lived through British colonialism, right? And for
Hmm.
them, like a lot of the things that the British took away from us was our dignity, right? Things
Hmm.
that we should be proud of. And
Hmm.
this show give that back to us. And I feel like that's very, very important.
Yeah,
Now they just
yeah.
got to give all our stuff back from the museums and whatever, and
Yeah,
just
yeah,
keep
yeah.
it going, keep giving it back.
God, Sophia, can't you just be happy? You know, like, oh my
No.
God, we don't need to. Oh my gosh. No, you know, it's funny because I remember when Parks and Rec came out, right? When like Aziz played Tom,
Mhm,
and it
mhm.
was
Yeah,
like, oh, we've got a brown guy, but like he's playing Tom, you know, and
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
the
They
fact
just
that
wrote
we've been
this character. Yeah.
100%. But like
Mhm.
you know, that's something I still struggle with because the example that comes to mind for me like more recently is like Riz in Sound of Metal, where he plays a character
Mm.
named
Yeah.
Ruben, right?
Mhm,
Which is
mhm,
like an amazing performance, probably one of my favorite performances by like a Muslim actor, but not
mhm,
Right.
necessarily playing a Muslim character, right?
mhm.
Right.
And like, what are your thoughts on that? Because of like, just in terms of having representation, but not necessarily overt representation, you know, where it's still they have to play characters named Tom and Ruben and so on and so forth.
I don't really have a problem with that because I want actors to be able to go for roles where they don't have to explain, like, oh, listen, we want to hire you, but now we have to change the entire script to make you fit into it, right? I feel like we
Hmm.
should be able to do that. I feel like if you want to have a character who was not supposed to be brown, but this actor is just phenomenal, and you just want to throw that actor in there, I don't have a problem with that, you know. But when you try to mix and match, so it'll be like Tom Patel, and then you just like throw it in there, I was like, what is this? Like, I feel like
Yeah.
in situations like, for example, especially fantasy, for foremost, like I don't think you need to explain it, even if it's in the real world. Like if it's not historical, I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters
Mhm,
if you
mhm,
can do that. It's nice when they do it, but I think if we only have brown actors play characters that are brown, and you have to make the story fit that, then that would limit them. And I want to see more brown characters on television, regardless of what they're
Yeah.
playing.
mhm. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think it's hard because yeah, it's like, do we want that like color, quote unquote, colorblind casting of like we're just gonna write a character, their name happens to be Tom, and like whoever shows up and is great at that character gets cast. But I do think that there's still that's still a form of erasure, you know, that like the
Mm,
baseline is like a character named Tom, and like you
yeah,
in your head are immediately like that's a white guy, and when it's not a white guy you're like, oh look, diversity. And so I feel like yeah, that's a tough question because I
it
think
is
yeah,
tough.
like
Like,
yeah,
yeah,
You know,
it's a
it's
good
funny.
point.
I asked Hamza Huck about this. I think on our podcast. Actually, maybe it was at the panel,
panel,
but
yeah.
his response was interesting, and it's not necessarily the best response. It's just his response is just like that the writer of that script had a story to tell, right?
Hmm.
And I think it's similar to what you're saying, Neebs, that just because this actor was so good that he was able to portray that writer's or that you know that the intent of the team behind uh, that project's work, if just because he was so good doesn't mean you have to now go and change everything because he happens to be a
Mhm,
different race or color. Like it's not his
mhm,
story, you know what I mean? Like it's
mhm.
a
Right.
story that was written by someone else. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I mean, is it really that hard to go from like Ruben to like you know Adam or like Omar or
Yeah,
like something
Aiden or
generic
Yeah,
something,
that
yeah,
can like
yeah.
you
yeah,
know? But I don't
yeah,
know.
I
I don't know
feel
if
that
there's a
way
yeah.
right or
about
wrong answer to
Game
this.
of Game of Thrones, right? So Game of Thrones just changed all the Valerians to black people, right?
Mm.
And
Oh,
do they need to
interesting.
go back and they need to change everything to make it fit? Like, no, like the story is still the same. It adds more to the some of the storylines that are going on, because there's questions of like, whose son is this, and if they don't have a little melanin in them, it's like, oh, I guess we could tell now, right? So something like that actually helps the story instead of hurting it,
Mm.
but they didn't need to go back
Yeah.
and change anything because it already fit
Yeah.
the narrative.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Interesting.
But that is interesting with regards to fandom too, because like if you look at the conversations recently around like the Rings of Power and like black hobbits and elves
Yes.
and like even just like the Black Little Mermaid and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like
Mhm.
there's so much where people are like, "Oh, like this mermaid has to be white." And it's like, "Bro, mermaids don't exist. Like you have to calm down." And it's just and I think like yeah, it's like
What? Wait.
sorry to
Can we
sorry to
pause?
break it to you. Yeah.
All right.
Sikandar needs to go like do
Yeah.
some research real quick. But yeah, because I think it's like it's really fascinating how like fandom is a place where I think a lot of people find a lot of belonging in a lot of ways and like really connect with these characters and connect with these stories and but it's so interesting where like how rigid that is sometimes and like where these like freakouts come from and
Yeah,
like
I'm I'm
what do you
I'm still
yeah
trying to figure I'm still trying to figure that out, right? Because like fandoms like nerd culture have always been with people who don't felt like they belong anywhere, right?
mhm
Because like nerd culture was not mainstream. It was something that was
mhm
very obscure, something they really love, and nobody understood why they were so passionate about this show or
mhm
this character. And they found solace in that. And then overnight, nerd culture became mainstream, and
mhm
there was this sense of like gatekeeping. It's like, oh, we don't want to
mhm
let these people in because of this and that. And overnight the culture just became super toxic, and a lot of these
mhm
characters were, yeah, they were white because like white people wrote them back in the 80s and the 70s and 50s and stuff like that, right? So of course they were all white. And if you change them like to fit today's like narrative and today's demographic, like what's the big deal? And I feel like a lot
Hmm.
of people hold on to that source material because they grew up with it and they think it's going to change it. But what they don't
mhm
understand is like you're not losing that source material. It's still
mhm
there. The original
mhm
Mermaid, Little Mermaid, is not going into a vault never to be seen again. It's still available on Disney Plus. You can watch
yeah
it whenever you want.
yeah Yeah,
Yeah.
and also, like, let's talk about how she was 16, and, like, there's other problems with that whole story too, like, your
Yeah.
father was
Well,
correct, like, he was
But
not
here's
the
something
villain here.
interesting about the Little Mermaid, and this is why I love the fact that like nerd culture is so much more inclusive, because there's so many more people in there, and they're like, well, you know what? Yes, it's a Danish story, but you know what?
Mhm.
Danish people colonized the Caribbean, and if Eric
hmm.
was in the Caribbean, that would make the Little
Mhm.
Mermaid black,
Mhm.
right? And like, what else? Who else had a Caribbean accent in the Little Mermaid? I'm pretty sure there was a lobster with a
Sebastian, yeah.
Caribbean. So, like, oh, is it that unheard of to find
Mhm.
Caribbean people in The Little Mermaid, even if mermaids were real? Like, think about
Mhm.
it,
Yeah, it's
right?
true.
Yeah,
It's true.
I love shutting people up with facts, that's my favorite,
Yes,
that's great.
that's the worst. And I
Historical
think
accuracy to shut down mermaid debates. I love it.
Yeah.
so. Like, Donald Glover said this once, and I loved it. And he's like, "There's blatant racist people, but then there's the racist people that really piss you off, and they're the ones that like don't realize they're racist because they'll say something like,
Mhm.
"Listen, it's not that I don't want a black Spider-Man. It's just that a black kid from Queens would never be nerdy." Like, what? Like,
What?
what? Like, I
What?
don't understand. Like, they'll say
Mm.
things like that, and they'll think it's
Mhm.
perfectly okay. And like,
Mhm.
it's this like way of like they're racist, but they don't realize they're racist, and they
Mhm.
think that what
Yeah.
they're saying is not rooted in bigotry because it's subliminal or it's like subconscious. They don't understand, and
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
like they have to be called out.
You mentioned something which is pretty interesting. It made me think about how like so much of Marvel and like you look back at like Stan Lee's history in terms of like the early editions of a lot of these comics. They're in response to like current events, like world
Right.
wars or like Soviet wars or whatever, right? And
Civil rights movement, all that stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's like you're portraying heroes that are relevant to the cultural setting of the time, right? So
Hmm.
why wouldn't you, within sort of just the understanding of like Marvel lore, recognize that as our current events evolve, so too do the heroes,
Yeah,
Uh,
Mhm.
absolutely.
it's yeah, it's an interesting
That's what I really
perspective that I
love.
never thought of before. Yeah.
That's what I really love about Miss Marvel, because Miss Marvel and Miles Morales were one of the last superheroes that Stan Lee was like gave his thumbs up on before he passed
Mhm.
away. So it's really
Mhm.
Wow.
cool that he got to see that.
Cool. Very
Yeah,
cool. Very, very cool.
that is dope.
All right.
Okay. What? Go for it.
No, I was gonna shift gears for a quick second because I know in addition to the incredible work that you're doing with all of this stuff, there's another side to you as well. And I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about the Chad list.
Oh man. So yeah. So before I got into this nerd culture stuff, I had a buddy of mine. His name is Chad. We're college roommates, and he's someone who is very adventurous, always trying to do things and like exciting things. And me, like, I had just gotten a job, got out of college, I had to like, support my family, and I was really just focused on work. So whenever he would tell us to hang out and stuff like that, I would always say yeah, but I would always be that friend that bails, always. And then like a lot of the times, because I bail, he can't do things. So one day, like, he took us hiking, and we went hiking. And like, I've never hiked a day in my life. Like, I didn't know. I brought like Tim's, which were like not hiking boots. They have a tree on them, but they're not hiking boots apparently. They busted up my foot, and I was like,
Yeah.
listen, I can't do this 3-day hike. I need to go back home now. So I made him turn around, take us back home. He was really disappointed. He was like, listen, before we do this, we're going to finish this hike before we die. In fact, you're gonna get so good at hiking that you're gonna climb Kilimanjaro. And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, I didn't really believe it, right? And then like 2 weeks had gone by, and I got a phone call, and unfortunately, he passed away in a motorcycle accident.
Oh, jeez.
And I was, it was a rough time.
Mm.
So what I did was I had to reevaluate my life. I went to therapy. I talked to somebody, and they introduced me to something called instrumental grief, where you write down something and turn it into an action, right? So I was like, Chad wanted to do all these things. Let me make a list of things that he would want to do, uh, and I would go and do them. So I would start doing all these things on this list, and amazing opportunities started coming my way. For example, like one of my things on my list was go to Antarctica. I went to Antarctica. I came back. I told a few people. One of my coworkers told a client. A client was having his son do a project on Antarctica. So he was like, "Hey, would you mind coming in and teaching them and showing them videos and of penguins and pictures?" I did that. He was so happy that like he got us like a huge like what you call it, a project, a bid that we won because of this favor that I did him, right? Which was
Mm.
really cool. He gave us like the like a little bit of a favoritism, and these are like these things started happening, and it was really cool. So I had told somebody about like, hey, I made this list of stuff, and every time I do something on this list, amazing opportunities come out of it. And when I told her, um, she was like, this is really cool. And I went, one of the things on my list was to write a poem. So I wrote a poem, and there was a reporter there. So the reporter saw my poem. She put me in the newspaper, all this cool stuff. And then later on, a few years go by, and she says, "Hey, I remember you telling me about your list. You should do a TED talk on it." And she invited me to go to NYU and do an entire TED talk on it. So I did a whole TED talk on the Chad list, and it was really cool and really exciting. And I got to honor his memory. And one of the things on the TED Talk was actually going to Comic Con, which altered my life, the complete trajectory of my
Amazing.
life. And it's
Mm.
really cool. And I tell people, like, the chat list involves a few categories. So one is like fear. So you always do something that you're afraid of, because fear is something that if you get used to, you can do anything you want. It's you turn that adrenaline, which is like no, fight, flight, or freeze, right? But the more you do with things, the more you do the fight instead of the flight and freeze. So you get to use that a little bit more. The other
Hmm.
thing with travel, obviously, like travel is something that helps you use your common sense, and you're like navigating. And all the best adventures come from traveling. Even the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was like, "Don't tell me how educated you are. Tell me how well you've traveled." Right?
Hmm.
Traveling is very essential to being a Muslim, and like we do pilgrimages to Hajj is requirement. So they knew the importance of travel. Other thing was to learn something. So every year I have to teach myself something. And then another thing is charity. I think charity is very important, and I think whatever charity you give, you get it back. I'm a volunteer
Mhm.
at a suicide hotline. I can't tell you how valuable that is to me and how much I've learned from that. It's really really cool.
Mhm.
I also started. I was a co-founder of a. I was a founding member of Muslims Against Hunger in New Jersey, and now it's like a national thing. So I did like all these cool things, and like so many opportunities came from these things. So like if you go on YouTube, you type in NYU TEDx NeebzCon, you can find it. It's a cool little TED talk that I got to do, and it's really exciting. It's called the Chad List.
Amazing.
And
Amazing.
I had a chance to watch it. I'm sure Scudder did too, but like it was like really great. Highly recommend everyone go watch it. But one of my favorite things that you said in there was like when you're saying about the goals and like one of them was like you can let a couple roll over, like set yourself a
Yeah.
deadline, but like this is supposed to be fun. And my favorite thing that you said was like the worst thing that could happen is you just accidentally live your life to the fullest. And I was like,
Yes.
man, I'm gonna get that. Like I'm gonna write it on my forehead and see that every day because like that's a great way to live your life. That's really beautiful. I like that a lot.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. And like it's funny, like one thing, just you gotta put yourself out there, and that's how you're at the right place at the right time. It could completely change the trajectory of like what your life is supposed to be and the people you meet along the way. Because I've never met you guys if I never made a TikTok and I never go into Mosquers, right? Like one decision can change your entire life. And it's really cool when you think about that. But if you're at home and you're not going out and you're not doing this stuff, these opportunities are not going to find you in your house. They're, it's a fortune favors the bold. It's what they say.
Okay, on that note, we are approaching the end of our time. Before we wrap up, we have a few rapid fire questions. Are you down to join us in this?
Oh yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
All right, let's
All
go.
right. Okay, so you know how this works. First thing that pops in your head. So, what's your most rewatched movie?
The Dark Knight.
Ooh, okay.
Nice.
What's
I was in The Dark Knight Rises. I was an extra in it.
Oh, were you?
Yeah,
Where? We'll watch for
In
you.
the Wall Street scene? In the Wall
yeah.
Street scene?
Yes, in the Wall Street scene. I'm like one of the
Nice.
guys
Yeah.
fighting in the front row.
Omer's come up a lot.
Awesome.
Omer was in that scene too. Omer Mirza
Oh,
was in that.
nice.
I don't know if you know that, but there you go. Okay, cool. Number 2, first concert you ever attended.
Bon Jovi.
Bon
Nice.
Jovi.
We're halfway there. Yeah, man.
That's awesome.
From Jersey,
That's
we have to
pretty
represent.
Muslim
I mean, yeah,
song
that's
when
as
you think about
that's
it.
as Jersey as it gets too.
Yeah,
But
that's
also,
very
like
Jersey.
living on a prayer. Aren't we all just living on a prayer?
Yes.
Wait,
That's
wasn't that like what was that Bon Jovi or that Brown Kid movie that just came out? Was that
Bruce Springsteen? That was Bruce.
Oh, that was
Springsteen.
Bruce Springsteen.
Oh.
Okay,
He's
yeah,
also
yeah,
from
yeah.
Jersey. Yeah.
Brown
okay,
Kid
okay.
movie.
Yeah, you even what was it called? What was it? There was
What is it? Into the Light? I don't know.
something like that. But
I don't
apparently
know.
it was good. I never watched it, but
Yeah,
apparently
it's
it was
really
good.
good.
Yeah.
I'll believe
We're
you.
gonna yeah.
Yep. Okay, a book you would take with you onto a deserted island.
Book that I would take to me on dessert. I'm probably the Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh yeah, that's my dad's favorite too.
Yeah.
Just because he's got a mustache does not mean he's rocking dad books.
No, I just think that's the
Forget
only
dad
reason
bods. It's
I
dad
know.
books.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, because he's just like, I love revenge, and it's like such a
Yes.
to him, it's like the best story of revenge that ever existed.
You know what? You know why I like it? Because it's a very Batman-ish book. Because Batman is a superhero who doesn't have any powers. He had to learn everything and teach himself stuff.
Yes.
And I feel like the Count of Monte Cristo is the same thing. Like he had so much. Like he did things out of spite, which I love that. I love when people win out of spite. They have so much spite that they'll like educate themselves on stuff.
Just like productive spite, like when you're just
Yes.
that petty that it's just you succeed and you're like, great.
I'm so petty.
I like
so
that.
petty.
I like that. But yeah, no, there's like this because my dad speaks French, and so there's this the French version. He's like, the English version is garbage. Like you have to watch the French version, and it's literally, I shit you not, like 9 hours long or something. It's like
Oh, like
so
the movie?
long.
There's like a French movie. Oh, okay.
Yes, and he watches it all of the time, and he'll like stay up till 4 a.m.
Isn't the
and I'm
book
like
crazy long too?
Yeah.
Probably.
You'll get
I've
rescued
actually
before
never
you
read
finish
the
that book. It's perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I'll get rescued before I finish it, right?
That's right.
It's perfect. Yeah, it's perfect. Perfect.
Keeping
Okay.
you entertained.
Next one. Which reality show would you go on as a contestant?
Ooh, that's easy. The Amazing Race. I would kill
Really?
at the Amazing Race. I would
Okay.
kill at the Amazing Race.
Nice. I would do the mole personally. I love the mole. I'm so
I
obsessed
have
with the
no
mole.
fear. Like I've like jumped out of planes. I've done wing
man.
walking. I've swam with sharks. Like I have no fear.
Okay.
Yeah.
We need to get you on the Amazing Race. This
Yeah.
Is it
I
still
would
on?
love that.
I feel like is it still on?
I think
I
it
think
is.
they ended
Like
during
because of
COVID.
COVID, I'm
They're back up,
assuming.
Yeah.
Can you imagine like a virtual version of that? That would be awful. Like a COVID virtual Amazing Race. God.
I feel like I'm cut out for a great Canadian baking show. That's my type of reality
Nice.
TV.
Nice. Are you watching The Mole, by the way? Neebz, are you watching them all?
No, no, I'm not watching
My
that.
dude, you got to watch them all. I
Really?
got to
All
tell
right,
everybody. I
I'll check
love
it
that
out.
show so much. All right, please do. And then we can compare notes afterwards.
Yep.
Nice.
Okay, and then the last question, the favorite question. What's your favorite way to eat potatoes?
Ooh, all right. Favorite way to eat potatoes. Oh my god, I love them all. Like that's like my children. How do I pick from them? I
Yeah,
love
man.
potatoes.
They're
There's
so good.
the crinkle fries, the waffle fries. There's
Mhm.
mashed potatoes. Oh my god. What?
Yeah.
So like there. Okay, so you guys don't know about these, but these are like the most ghettoest fries in the world. They're from this restaurant called Checkers. Checkers are only available
Bro,
in the hood. Like
I've been
it,
there. I've
you've
been
been there,
there. I went
yo.
with Nadeem. Checkers in
Yes,
Jersey fries
yes,
is
yes.
crazy.
Yo, they're so good. And like I don't know what's in them. It's probably a little bit of crack. I don't know, but it's so amazing. It's
It's,
so good.
if you survive,
Damn.
it's worth it.
If you survive, it's
Oh.
Yeah,
like I'm
it's
from Newark. I
very.
can say that. But yeah, if you survive.
It's a little
All right.
rough, a little rough around the
Yeah,
Checkers
yeah.
locations, but
Nice.
yeah, it's good fries.
It's
Okay.
right near
Valid choice.
UMDNJ. So if you get shot, the hospital's like right there.
So you're good. I
Convenient,
thought you were talking
convenient.
survive as in it's like so
Oh
deadly to
no,
like
no,
your heart
no,
health or like your cholesterol that like
no, no, no,
that's not what you're
Yeah.
talking about. Got it.
no.
Um
Yeah,
I know that like we usually end with a rapid fire, but I really wanted to talk to Neebs about Everything Everywhere All at Once because I think that was like the perfect movie. And it was interesting because I just have a question for you that we can pretend is a rapid fire question and so we're
Sure.
not moving too far away from the format. But um I saw that movie like separately from all my friends. And when we came together to talk about our favorite part, um, it was so interesting like how each of us picked a different part like
Hmm.
mm,
based off of like our own experience and our own trauma, which was just funny. So like for example, my one friend has like quite a fraught relationship with her mom, and so like the mother daughter relationship, that was like she was like, oh my god, I was crying because of that. My other friend is like she like immigrated here when she was 12, and so like just that immigrant storyline of like kind of the mom protecting the daughter from the grandparents and like but being like, I'm doing a really good job, like you don't have it as bad as I had it. That was what really resonated with her. And for me it was like the one scene which I was telling Asif before we joined, that like I accidentally watched the scene again and just was sobbing and was like, calm down, you have to record a podcast. But it was the scene where her husband is like, in another life I
yo,
would
mine
like give
too.
anything.
Mine
Sobbed. I
too.
was like,
That's my
oh
favorite scene in that
my
Yes.
movie.
god.
Yes.
I was just like, holy. So I would just wanted to ask, and I guess I know Sikandar now, but I wanted to
That's
ask like,
wild.
what was the part of the movie that resonated with you? And if it was the laundry and taxes part, I get it.
I so I just like you guys, like I love the dad in that, and like he was short
So
round
good.
in
I know.
Indiana
Yeah.
Jones,
Indiana
and
Jones.
Yes.
he
Yeah.
gave up acting because he thought there was no
Yeah.
more
It
roles,
was and it
and then
was
he
so
Wild.
racist. Yeah.
right, and then he
Yeah.
saw Crazy Rich Asians, and he's like, maybe it's time to make like a comeback. Maybe there's like
Yeah.
opportunity, and then he came and he found it. I think he
It
was
was
the greatest
perfect.
character, and like
Agreed.
what I really loved about his character is that like he isn't an overly masculine character, and I feel
Mhm.
like a lot of times like yeah, like I'm into comic shit, I'm into nerd culture. I'm not an overly masculine person. I'm not stoic. I'm not serious all the time. I'm very goofy. I watch Bachelor, so like I love the way that he challenged that, and he was just himself. But it was
Mhm.
his kindness that really
Mhm.
carried the movie, and it made people change their minds about him, and the way he was like overlooked for so much of the movie,
Mhm.
and then you see at the end that you know like yes, a lot of things may feel inconsequential in this huge world that we live in, but what's not unimportant is the kindness that we share with each other. And I love the
Mhm.
fact that it was him who got to share that with everybody, and it's just like no matter what's happening, there's always time to be kind, and I love that.
Mm.
Mhm. Yeah.
It was such a
Beautiful.
good movie. It was such a good
So
movie.
good. Oh my
You know
gosh.
what's interesting? I watched that movie twice, once in theaters and then once afterwards, like with some buddies in Banff, and we like couldn't find it on any streaming platform, and it was like very bad like abilities to
Quality.
find it. Like, you know what I mean? Like so like I downloaded a torrent. I will say it.
They're
I could
coming
have
for you.
sworn. No, I know, right? I could have sworn that like when we watched that movie in theaters, there was subtitles during that scene, right? Like when he's
There
speaking to
were.
her.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we watched it in
Oh,
Banff,
there
there was
weren't?
no subtitle, but it
Oh.
still was so no. But that's the thing; it was still so
Oh,
emotionally resonant. Like you could
yeah.
Yeah.
still fully comprehend what he was saying, like and how he was saying.
Mhm.
Like no one was lost. Everybody fully
Yeah.
Yeah.
got it. And like I'm like, damn, that is power. Because I was like,
Yeah.
wasn't there, I could have sworn there was
There
subtitles, but I was like, I still
were.
fully understand everything he's saying, even though I clearly do not speak Mandarin or
I'm
Cantonese.
literally tearing up again thinking about it.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah.
It's so good. It's
He
so
needs to be in
good.
more movies because I
100%.
can't believe
Yeah.
that, like, because of lack of representation, we lost this massive talent. We could have seen
Yes.
him in movies for the last 10 years, but we
Yeah.
didn't because of so little
Yeah.
representation. And
And the
that's why
fact
representation is so important.
and when you,
Yeah.
because I listened to the first little bit of your podcast episode about it, and then I was like, I want to stop because I actually wanted to talk to you about it. And I was like, I don't want to know what you think already.
Yeah, yeah.
But like, I heard in that little bit that like apparently like Jackie Chan, they wanted Jackie Chan in that role, and I'm just like,
Yes.
Mhm.
no, like yeah, like
No.
it's so crappy too when like there's
Yeah.
so much like limitation of like, oh, we already have this one Asian actor, so like let's just put
Yes.
him in literally everything, and it's like,
And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
originally it was going to be him as the focal character too,
yes,
rather
and
than
then
Yeah.
Michelle,
Salman.
and Michelle Yeoh is like,
Oh my God.
she's
Killed it.
just, she's, I am so obsessed with her, like since Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, but then just, oh god, she's so regal. I just want to grow up to meet her.
Yes.
She's so
We
cool.
need her in Bridgerton. We need to see. That's what we need.
Ooh, yeah, she'd be perfect. That's her vibe for sure. I feel like she like would just not wear the outfits though. She'd be like,
Yeah.
I need to do my moves. Like, don't put me in a corset. But yeah, she's dope.
All right.
But anyway, yeah.
We'll just
Just
edit that so that's before rapid fire. It's
yeah,
perfect.
sorry.
Magic of editing.
From
There you
So
go.
good.
Asif, make a note of
Mhm.
that. Okay, awesome. Well, on that note, we're just gonna pretend we just finished rapid fire. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure, Neebz. How can people
Yeah.
find you and your work?
Sure. So I am at WatchWithNeebz on every platform. Neebz is spelled Neebz. Every platform is WatchWithNeebz. And if you want to check out our podcast, we are Salam Nerds, available everywhere podcasts are available. Also on YouTube. We do live episodes so people can like actually chat with us while we're doing it. And we
Nice.
recap every show. We're recapping Love is Blind soon. We do
Ho,
Bachelor
ho,
every
ho.
Tuesday, House of the Dragon, Rings of
Yo,
Power,
we gotta I
anything
got
Marvel
okay.
Star Wars.
Listen, I gotta just ask you. I mean,
Mm.
that episode of Love is Blind with the tears,
Oh, I
my
just
dude.
posted
I
that.
can't I cannot believe they showed that. Like
I'm
I
so
was
glad they did. That's
blown
so funny.
away. I was blown away. I couldn't
So funny.
believe it. I couldn't believe it. It was amazing. It was amazing.
You know what
But
it is? These shows are all about narratives, right? And if that woman didn't set up the narrative of him
yeah,
being a deceptive person, that she got this red flag and vibe, they would have
yeah.
never shown that. And it's so good. It's
I
so
couldn't
good.
believe it. I couldn't believe it. I was like blown away. But yes, anyway.
Mm.
Awesome. Okay. Well, it was a complete pleasure. Thank you again
Yes.
so much.
Yes.
And
Well, I
we
have a
look forward
question.
to
I have a
seeing more.
question.
Yeah.
When are
Oh,
you guys
sure.
gonna
Hit
come
it.
on? When are you guys gonna come on our podcast? Because we need to have
Whenever
you
you
guys on the
invite us,
podcast.
Whenever
man.
you
Whenever you
want.
invite us.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. I
Done.
can't
Home
wait.
and home, baby. Home and home.
Let's do it.
Right on. Amazing. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Halal Gap. Stay tuned for more episodes and follow our brand new Instagram page at @thehalal_gap. The Halal Gap is a Mosquers production. You can find the Mosquers on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok by searching Mosquers Film Festival. Thank you to our sound and video editor, Vikram Chouhan, our tile artist, Narmeen Saiyed, our researcher, Zaid Hassan, and our producer, Asif Quraishi. Please rate us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments about our podcast, you can email asif@themosquers.com. On behalf of Sikandar and myself, thank you for joining us. Catch you next time.